Good Tuesday morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Tuesday, March 25th. It is 8 a.m. on the button on the East Coast. I hope you're having a good Tuesday morning. We kick the hour off with the hot topic of the hour. The Trump administration takes action to stop the exploitation of housing programs for illegal migrants. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, teaming up with the Homeland Security, signing the American Housing Programs for American Citizens Memorandum of Understanding yesterday. This MOU, a critical agreement designed to end the misuse of taxpayer money by preventing illegal migrants from accessing federal housing programs. Joining me now is the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner. Secretary, great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, good morning, Maria. Thank you so much for having me.
First, take us back. How significant was the situation in terms of federal housing meant for American citizens being used by illegal aliens and illegal migrants in the last 4 years?
Well, it's very significant. You know, the Biden administration was completely irresponsible, and the border security and immigration policies were very harmful to our country, so much that they prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. And so, as you alluded to before, Secretary Noem and I, we put an end to that yesterday with our partnership and MOU to make sure that the American citizens, American people, are not only prioritized, but they are the only priority when it comes to HUD-funded public housing instead of illegal aliens. I mean, right now, Maria, we serve 1 out of 4 Americans in need of public housing. Well, that's going to change. We should be serving 4 out of 4, every American that needs public housing to this point. And so this MOU will allow us to do that and ensure that the American people are taken care of.
Well, I mean, Secretary, this is just unbelievable. I mean, here we are talking for so many years about this inability of young people to get a house and this fact that we've got homeless people on the streets and we've got veterans that need housing. And all of a sudden, we recognize that we have the availability. It's not some massive shortage. It's just that the housing that's on the books are being used for illegals.
That's right. I mean, it's supply and demand. You know, we have the precious, hardworking taxpayers of America are our priority. And as you alluded to, young people are saying, well, how am I going to get a house? And so right now, you look at the deportations and the job that the president and Secretary Noem are doing of closing the border, securing the border. But those that are here have to understand that you will not be allowed to use taxpayer money to live in public housing. And so not only is the supply going to go up, but the demand is going to go down, because we are ensuring that any public housing will be used for American citizens. Right now, Maria, 9 million people lived in public or subsidized housing. And this MOU will help us to ensure that the data will tell us who's in these houses. The ones that are illegal will know that they're illegal. And so that our American people will have places to live like they deserve.
I mean, it's just extraordinary the amount of resources that the last administration allocated toward illegals coming into the country. Half of them were not even vetted. We're over here recording people on the terrorist watch list, and yet they're,
right.
I mean, why was FEMA broke when Trump walked in for the second time, right? You know, FEMA doesn't have the money. Why? Because all that money went to care for and house illegals. Now, you and the Interior Secretary, Doug Burgum, also announcing plans to identify federal lands where affordable housing could be built. Tell us where those federal lands are, and what do you envision here for these federal lands?
You're right, Maria. So Secretary Burgum and I, we formed a partnership between DOI and HUD to identify federal lands that have been underutilized and use these to build affordable housing. There's approximately 500 million acres in our country, our beautiful United States, that could be utilized to build affordable housing. And so they're all over the country, urban and rural places. So you look at places like Utah, Nevada, and other places around the country that we'll be looking at with our task force that we created to identify these lands and build affordable housing for the American people.
Where are the federal lands largely that you're looking at that could be used for ordinary citizens?
Well, right now, Maria, you know, we just joined together. We just created the task force. And so the identification of these lands is happening right now. And as I said before, you know, they're in rural areas and urban. So we'll get back to you, more to come on that.
All right. Well, look, mortgage rates have finally come off of the highs, below 7%. The 30-year fixed rate hitting 6.67% for the week of March 20th, Mr. Secretary. What is your take on the housing crisis that we've been talking about for so long? And there is a reason that one of the first executive orders that President Trump signed was to get more housing on the books.
Well, yes, ma'am. We do have a housing affordability crisis. And the deregulation that's going on, the regulatory environment over the last 4 years has been tremendous. It's been burdensome. The bureaucratic red tape has hindered developers and others to build in our states and our cities. And so what you're seeing now, I mean, President Trump, as you know, is the master negotiator. He signed an executive order on day one to bring down the cost of housing. And so at HUD and across the federal government, we are deregulating, and particularly when it comes to housing, so the developers, the private sector, public-private partnerships can be formed to build affordable housing. And so mortgage rates, as you know, for 7 weeks, they were coming down, and they're going to fluctuate. But President Trump and his team, they know exactly what they're doing. The American people are his priority. He's an American first man, American first president. And so everything you see happening is for the American people. And in the end, for the posterity of our nation and for the benefit of American people, it's going to shake out and be the greatest days that we've seen.
So where is the supply going to come from, Secretary?
Well, the supply comes from unleashing the private sector. The supply comes from allowing states and localities to have the ability, when it comes to zoning.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's a result of deregulation. The housing supply
Absolutely.
coming on board is a result of the deregulation, where you're unlocking rules that were in place, stopping this kind of flow of supply.
That's exactly right. You hit it right on the head. The deregulation will unleash the private sector in order to build affordable housing around the country.
Secretary, I know that you picked up the baton from Dr. Ben Carson with regard to opportunity zones. During the Biden administration, they didn't do anything about the opportunity zones that President Trump created with Dr. Ben Carson. You want to give us a word on opportunity zones this time around?
Yeah, so opportunity zones were very impactful the first time around. And still today, there's been about $84 billion of private money invested in opportunity zones. Opportunity zones gave the American people, the forgotten communities around America, rural, tribal, and urban, the opportunity to build a new foundation as it pertains to housing, creating new operating businesses. Opportunity zone home values went up while rents did not go up. 1 million people got lifted off of poverty in opportunity zones. So I'm very excited for the extension and the continuation of opportunity zones, in particular when you talk about the housing crisis that we have, and private sector, developers, elected officials, people all around the country have great anticipation, Maria, for the continuation of opportunity zones.
All right, Secretary, great to catch up with you. Thank you so much. Scott Turner, good to see you, sir. We'll be watching your work.
Hey, great to see you. Thank you.
All right, Secretary, thank you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.